Every few months, the Pokemon company releases a brand new set, fresh hits, shiny SARs, and that adrenaline rush of chasing those top hits. Collectors rush to open packets, investors rush to grade cards, and prices explode overnight. But here's the question, is the Pokemon market growing or just inflating? Today we'll break down how modern Pokemon cards mirror real-world inflation and why vintage cards might be the only scarce asset left in this market. Welcome back to Pokéconomics, where cardboard meets capitalism. This is episode 4, Modern vs Vintage and the Pokemon reprint economy. I actually don't know if that is the title of this video because I haven't finalized that, but we'll just run with it. So let's start with the basics. When the government prints more money, prices rise and purchasing power decreases. Now the same thing happens when it comes to Pokemon cards, except the money printer is the Pokemon card company and the currency is booster boxes. During the 2020 boom, demand for sealed product skyrocketed just like we see today. But back then we had Hidden Fates, Evolving Skies, and 151. These sets sold out instantly and prices on the secondary market tripled overnight. So what did the Pokemon card company do? They reprinted and prices collapsed. That's right, sets like the ones I'm referring to actually collapsed in price and no one even wanted them. In economics, we call this supply inflation, the artificial expansion of goods in the market to meet demand. And at first, this satisfies the market, it satisfies the hunger of buyers. But as that supply keeps rising, that hunger fades, markets cool down, and prices drop rapidly. And we've seen this on every single set ever reprinted. It releases, it sells out, prices skyrocket, reprints hit, and then prices collapse. The only problem is these reprints are getting bigger and bigger with every generation that passes, and we'll touch on that later in the video. Now, reprints act like a money stimulus, therefore boosting short-term access but eroding long-term value and scarcity. Vintage, on the other hand, it can't be reprinted. Its supply is perfectly inelastic. We've talked about supply curves in episode 2, why are Charizards worth more than gold. So we're not going to cover supply curves again. Just watch that video if you want to know about supply curves moving. As a result, vintage sets just become rarer and rarer over time. Now here's the kicker, because you could argue modern sets will become vintage as years go by, and I agree with that, but here's the real kicker. The print runs in the 1990s and 2000s were microscopic compared to today. Now we have to use estimates here because this data has never been published, but using various community resources and interviews, estimates suggest that the base set total English print run was likely well under 10 million booster packs. However, modern sets such as Evolving Skies or even 151 are believed to reach hundreds of millions of packs globally. That right there is a 10 to 20x increase in supply before even factoring the expansion of print runs when it comes to recent sets such as Black and White and Mega Evolutions, which didn't even sell out on release day. Now you could argue all of this is make-believe since we don't have an official source for booster pack print runs. However, PSA population data tells a similar story. A first edition base set Charizard has fewer than 5,000 copies submitted to PSA regardless of the grade. However, modern chase cards such as the Moonbreon from Evolving Skies, the PSA 10 population itself is sitting just below 20,000. In fact, even the total number of Moonbreons submitted to PSA is just over 25,000 cards. And this is the perfect example of inflation in action. Modern cards, yes, might be more accessible, but they're not as scarce. As a result, to me at least, vintage is like gold, a hedge against overproduction and a store of long-term true value. Now looking at demand and therefore hype cycles, modern Pokemon cards run on speculative demand. This is where you are buying because you believe the price will keep rising. That's it, no other reason. New sets create a ton of hype. You see box breakers open up cases and cases of booster boxes. You see YouTubers chasing big hits, which I'm also guilty of. And as a result, that hype consumes you. You want a part of that adrenaline rush. And as a result, that market just goes vertical. But this demand is fragile. It is momentum based. Therefore, when the next set releases, eyes turn, momentum drops, and attention shifts. But what does all that mean? Well, prices tumble. In contrast, vintage cards, they spur up emotion. They're emotional tied assets. They're nostalgic and they have that rooted history. You wanted that Charizard card when you were a kid. You idolized that Lugia when you saw the movie in the cinemas. Vintage cards can define generations. Therefore, whereas speculative demand and modern cards burn bright and fast, vintage cards burn slow and steady, but it's harder to put out that flame. And that's why we see modern cards doing crazy spikes on the daily, the weekly, the monthly. The Van Gogh Pikachu is a recent one. Look at the spike on that, absolutely wild. But everyone turns a blind eye to the vintage cards, which continue to appreciate bit by bit, year by year. Which brings us on to the utility argument. In economics, we often talk about utility. This is the satisfaction you gain by owning something, the reason you purchased it, that inner feeling. When it comes to modern Pokemon cards, economists could describe that market as depreciating utility. As we said, we see so much social media hype that excitement peaks as soon as the set drops. The thrill of trying to find product and the thrill of pulling the chase card everyone is talking about. But that feeling fades very fast if you are just craving that adrenaline hit. Whereas vintage is the opposite. That utility increases over time because, as we've already mentioned, it is tied to identity, memory, and cultural presence. And that's why, to me, vintage is treated like art, not inventory. It's less about flipping and making a quick buck, and it's more about holding and building something that you like to showcase. Because deep-rooted history compounds the same way interest does in finance. Now let's talk about some market mechanics. Modern cards, don't get me wrong, are far more liquid, meaning you can sell them fast and you can buy them fast. There's constant demand by new people entering the market, hype circulating on social media, investors trying to chase quick gains. But all that liquidity comes with volatility. Fast-moving markets also crash. Vintage, on the other hand, is much slower. It has less buyers and sellers, probably because it's more expensive. Therefore, it has long holding periods. But it is stable. I mean, I say stable, we are talking about cardboard here. And that's what we would call the liquidity stability trade-off. One offers speed, the other offers security. And it's similar to stock market investing. Modern is your growth stock, your tech stocks, your SPACs, your AI companies. It's high risk, but it could also be high reward. Whereas vintage is your blue chip. It's the boring companies no one cares about, but the companies that keep appreciating year on year by 5%. It's consistent, it's proven, and it has that long track record. As a result of all of this, the smartest collectors should treat Pokemon, or at least look at Pokemon, with the aim of building a diversified portfolio. You should of course hold modern. It's fun, it's risky, it's exciting, and this should be your active trades. But you should also have some good vintage in your inventory, that store of value and that wealth preservation. Balance that risk and balance the reward. It's okay to dabble in a bit of both. The issue comes when you listen to people that just preach one side. Just combine modern upside with vintage resilience. It's not that hard, because then you can hedge against both inflation and hype. So where is all the real money going in today's market? Modern Pokemon is like currency. It keeps printing and supply is increasing. It's great for short-term trades, but risky for long-term holds. Vintage Pokemon is like your reserves. It doesn't inflate as fast, but it also doesn't tumble with every single new set that keeps dropping. Reprints may increase access, but it dilutes rarity. And in any economy, once scarcity disappears, so does the value. But for the real answers on where the smart money is going, you'll have to subscribe to the channel, because that brings us to the end of episode 4 of the Pokéconomics series. I hope you enjoyed the video and learned something new. If this is your first time watching one of our Pokéconomics videos, make sure you check some of the previous episodes, which I will link right here, and I'll just show on the screen again while you can take a pic of what you want to watch.